Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yacharanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasharanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yacharanandana Braja Janaranjana Yacharanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Sutara Sadashi Śrimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalila Bhavishtom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Sutara Sadashi Śrimad Divine Grace Śrila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantha Raj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. July of 1977 was special for pious Hindus. This is page 444, if you see it, yes? And the people of Vrindavan spent extra time in reading scriptures and visiting holy places. So by the end of July, when the trees and bushes were freshening with green leaves, pilgrims came in crowds to Vrindavan and to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Despite the mud and the rain, many of the people were in a jubilant mood, relieved from the oppressive heat and anticipating Julan Yatra, the swing festival of Radha and Krishna. Julan Yatra was Vrindavan's biggest festival and would occur in mid-August this year. The local newspapers were giving reports on Srila Prabhupada's health, and a genuine concern for his well-being prevailed throughout Vrindavan and surrounding villages. Therefore, because of the festival season as well as out of concern for Srila Prabhupada, many people were coming to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Those who came around 9 a.m. got to see Srila Prabhupada when he went for his morning darshan of the deities. Srila Prabhupada still had no appetite and had scarcely eaten during the past 6 weeks. He was no longer regular in his times for sleeping, taking massage, or sitting up and translating. Feeling himself to be at a critical period, he had given permission for the devotees all over the world to recite a simple prayer. My dear Lord Krishna, if you desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. He would regularly go before the deities each morning, wearing his dark sunglasses and sitting erect in the rocking chair. He would hold his palms together in a gesture of prayer, while two men, one in front and one behind, carefully carried the rocker from Prabhupada's room into the temple room. They would set the chair down first before the deities of Gaur Nitai, then before Krishna Balaram, and then before Radha Shyam-Sundar. Then they would carry him to a central spot in the courtyard under the tamal tree and set his chair down on the black and white checkered marble floor. Has everyone seen this picture? Have you all seen that picture before? I mean, it's in the Lilamrita. It's a very sweet picture. Srila Prabhupada would sit facing Krishna and Balaram, and the devotees would sit down around him and begin a kirtan. As the kirtan began, two Gurukul boys would rise and come in front of him, where they would begin dancing with arms upraised, their cotton chadars swinging back and forth. Prabhupada would usually not speak or even smile, but after a few minutes would give his garlands to a devotee who would place them around the necks of the dancers. Soon two other young boys would come forward, and the first boys would garland them with the garlands they had received from Srila Prabhupada and then sit down. For half an hour, the dancing and singing continued. Guests to the temple would gather, many of them offering money at Prabhupada's feet, which rested on an embroidered silk cushion. Srila Prabhupada was gaining resolve to go to the West. One of the astrologers had said that by the 4th of September, after checking with a physician, Srila Prabhupada could undertake travel, but for health only. I will go there to our Pennsylvania farm, said Srila Prabhupada. And he appeared hopeful. He didn't consider the astrologers absolute guide. He had consulted them more out of curiosity. Astrology was part of the Vedic knowledge, but the modern-day practitioners were often dubious. When Abhiram came from Delhi with a report from a new astrologer, Srila Prabhupada heard it while continuing to chant intently and silently on his beads. His main point, Srila Prabhupada, said Abhiram, was that for 6 months there is trouble, especially in the first week of September, and then again on certain dates in October and November. The longevity is 82 years, 5 months, and 11 days, which means February 28, 1978. This is according to birth and stars arrangement, but he made it very clear that due to the hand of Krishna this could be changed, and if you can pass through 1978, then he sees 4 or 5 years ahead clear. When the report was finished, Srila Prabhupada was quiet for a few minutes and then said, by calculation, the age is finished. That doesn't matter. Rather, if I am finished now, it will be glorious. Living will also be glorious, said Tamal Krishna. Yes, said Srila Prabhupada, let us see as Krishna desires. Other horoscopes showed an inauspicious time ahead due to the entry of Saturn into the 8th house. Srila Prabhupada took this to indicate that his condition was most critical. In either case, whether according to the stars or according to Krishna, who could change destiny? Everything was in Krishna's hands. But Srila Prabhupada was still inclined to tour the West. If I can work a little more, he said, our society will be very strong. I want to see that what I have done is made still stronger. Prabhupada's talk of travel, however, coincided with increasing weakness. He talked less. When Tamal Krishna tried to encourage him to translate, he replied, when I get inspiration, I will take it up. Don't try to force me. I am going through a difficult time and am now feeling restless. It is not mechanical. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 21, texts. On the list it says text 42 and 43. Is that correct? Or did we skip any? Okay. Kadamba Champa Kashoka. Kadamba Champa Kashoka. Karanja Bakulashanai. Kundamandara Kutai Jais. Chuttapotara Lankritam. Karandavai Pravarhangsai. Kuraraya Jalakukutai. Sarashais Chakravakaischa. Chakoraya Valgukujitam. Kadamba Champaka Shoka. Karanja Bakulashanai. Kundamandara Kuta Jais. Chuttapotar Lankritam. Karandavai Plavir Hangshai. Kuraraya Jalakukutai. Sharashai Chakravakaischa. Chakuraya Balgakujitam. Kadamba Champaka Shoka. Karanja Bakula Shanai. Kundamandara Kuta Jais. Chuttapotar Lankritam. Karandavai Pravarhangsai. Kuraraya Jalakukutai. Sarashai Chakravakaischa. Chakuraya Balgakujitam. Kadamba Champaka Shoka. Karanja Bakulashanai. Kundamandara Kuta Jais. Chuttapotar Lankritam. Karandavai Plavarhangsai. Kurarai Jalakukutai. Sarasai Chakravakaischa. Chakuraya Balgakujitam. Kadamba. Shri Shivara Govinda Dev Ki. Kadamba. Kadamba flowers. Champaka. Champaka flowers. Ashoka. Ashoka flowers. Karanja. Karanja flowers. Bakula. Bakula flowers. Asanai. By asana trees. Kunda. Kunda. Mandara. Mandara. Kotajai. And by Kujata trees. Chuttapotai. By young mango trees. Alankritam. Adorned. Karandavai. By Karandava ducks. Say that 3 times fast. Plavai, by plovers. Hansai, by swans. Gururai, by ospreys. Jalakukutai, by waterfowl. Sarasai, by cranes. Chakravakai, by Chakravaka birds. Cha and Chakorai, by Chakora birds. Valgu, pleasing. Kujitam, vibration of birds' sounds. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. For the most, translation, Lake Bindu Sarovara was adorned by flowering trees such as Kadamba, Champaka, Ashoka, Karanja, Bakula, Asana, Kunda, Mandara, Kutaja, and young mango trees. The air was filled with the pleasing notes of Karandava ducks, plovers, swans, ospreys, waterfowls, cranes, chakravakas, and chakoras. Purport. For most of the trees, flowers, fruits, and birds mentioned here as surrounding Bindu Sarovara Lake, English synonyms cannot be found. All the trees mentioned are very pious in that they produce a nice aromatic flower, such as the champak, kadamba, and bakula. The sweet sounds of waterfowl and cranes made the surrounding area as pleasant as possible and created a very suitable spiritual atmosphere. We can repeat the translation. Lake Bindu Sarovara was adorned by flowering trees, such as Kadamba, Champaka, Ashoka, Karanja, Bakula, Asana, Kunda, Mandara, Kutaja, and young mango trees. The air was filled with pleasing notes of Karandava ducks, plovers, swans, ospreys, waterfowl, cranes, chakravakas, and chakoras. This is like the song Vibhavari Shesha. Who knows that song? You know that song? You've heard Vibhavari Shesha? Prabhupada sings. If you get the opportunity, you should listen to Prabhupada's collection of various melodies. They're all available, I guess, online now. But you have to go to whatever website you prefer, and you just look it up, and there were previously CDs, so they're numbered, KT13, KT14, I don't know how they categorize them. But when you hear Srila Prabhupada, it's like he was saying in Leelamrita, it is not mechanical, it is by inspiration. So when Prabhupada's singing, this inspiration is coming from an otherworldly source. It is not just some mundane sound vibration. Generally when people are singing, they're trying to impress the audience. But this has nothing to do with that. These songs of devotion are in themselves highly elevated, which is why we have and give such reverence to our acharyas like Narottam Das Thakur, etc., and Vishwanath Chakra. For these prayers that we're reciting, they're not ordinary compilations just for glorification of some mundane personality. Okay, so if you hear these prayers like this Vibhavari Shesha, it's a morning tune. We sing it in Vrindavan because Prabhupada's Samadhi is there. So Prabhupada's Samadhi Arati is 4:10, okay, and Mangala Arati is 4:30. So at 4:10 we chant the Sangsara prayers to Srila Prabhupada directly, because Srila Prabhupada is directly there, in his Samadhi. And then you go to the temple, and you don't repeat the Samsara prayers again. You chant the Vibhavari Shesha prayers. So it's like a continual program. So you're chanting the Samsara prayers to Prabhupada, and then you go to the temple and you chant Vibhavari Shesha, which has all of these different aspects of Vrindavan beautifully composed and obviously melodiously sung by Srila Prabhupada and then taught to us. So if you get a chance, you should hear that Vibhava Vishesha. And so this, and Prabhupada is very short in the purport. Remember, he said, it's not mechanical, it's by inspiration. So, he'll go, there's many other aspects, like the next purports, the purport is also not very, but then in 45 and 47, which we won't spoil for whoever's going to give that class, it's a very nice purport. And Prabhupada goes on and gives some very specific instructions. So you'll have to pay attention to that class. But essentially, we should try to appreciate that the words of the spiritual master are not just, again, he said these are Bhaktivedanta purports, these translations are to be the law books for the next 10,000 years. Okay, and what does that mean, law books? I mean, we don't see anything in here regarding specific adjudication or case precedents, but yet everything is there, historically speaking, but revealed and put into context according to time and circumstances, which is, at least as it's been, Prabhupada specifically said, that this is the unique attribute of the spiritual master, that he can convey the essence of the Shastra according to time and circumstances. In other words, no change, no adulteration, no manipulation, no concoction, no speculation. So this is in one sense, it's the definition of self-realization. That the spiritual master can, according to the audience, his specific disciples at time and circumstance, he knows exactly what is required for their lifting of consciousness. All right? Nectar Devotion also gives that briefly, that says that the spiritual master's unique quality is he knows exactly what to speak to the disciple for his benefit. So this is an individual, this is not just some blanket thing that anyone can have access to. One has to, even if reading the words of the Nectar Devotion, if one is approaching them from an academic, scholarly point of view, he will not get the benefit. He has to have the dedicated emotion. You can tap, Dr. Fred. He has to have the dedicated emotion. This is genuine. It cannot be, just like you cannot go to someone and pretend to love them. There are innumerable stories, we don't have to get into it, people trying to make advances on someone for some ulterior motive and pretending to love that person. But because it's not genuine, it's easily discerned. So this is also, it's not that Krishna, you can fool Krishna in the heart. We have to also find some way within ourselves to approach the spiritual master in a genuine fashion so that he can appreciate, not just some flowery words to impress. Prabhupada wrote that famous offering, and the offering for Srila Prabhupada's homage in August is also, or whenever it is this year, his Vyas Puja. Every Prabhupada disciple and also many others who are in positions that are directly related to the management of Srila Prabhupada's temples, they'll write their Vyas Puja homages. And Prabhupada also wrote one. This is the tradition. And he was mildly concerned of the direction that the Gaudiya Math had taken at that point. And he was very pointedly, in one sense, saying that these flower offerings, we go there, these are not the real meaning of Vyas Puja. This is something that, so Prabhupada was very bold. He was a grahastha. And all of his godbrothers basically are sannyasis at this time. Leaders of different maths and whatnot. And here he is telling them that this is not a nice offering, that we come together once a year and throw some flower petals down and then go back to our situation. And where's the preaching? Where is the order of the spiritual master? So we have to be, there has to be what, is commonly described as self-awareness. Some people don't think, how is it, and this is an individual attribute as well as an institutional attribute. Collectively we have to be self-aware, just like we have to be aware as the inmates of Radha Govinda Temple, that as the custodians, it is our responsibility to make sure that the temple is in a condition to welcome guests. That means clean, in every respect, not just in appearance, but also in attitude. When we receive someone, they should feel welcomed. This is the whole point of, otherwise why maintain such a big temple when we see that the Goswamis were sleeping under trees, moving from place to place. But the temple, Prabhupada said, is there to give shelter to those who want to become devotees, not for any other reason. We maintain it for everyone, but ultimately the goal is to attract those who are ready to make that decision to surrender. Because otherwise, what do you do? Where do you go? The same thing, I remember when I was trying to become serious, still I'm trying to become serious. At that time, I was thinking, when you surrender, what is the process of surrender? But the devotees were very kind and said that the surrendering process is that you just present yourself to Krishna. You go before the deities, and it's described there. And it's from this day forward, I am yours. So it seems to be a very simple, nothing, that, is that it? Is that all there is? But it's once you can actually verbalize that, your mind and your consciousness you have the opportunity to synchronize now these two seemingly opposite forces of the mind, the intelligence. You have to, and for many people, it's almost as difficult as saying "I love you." This is a common cause of disagreement amongst married couples. They make whole sitcoms out of it. And what do they say? You never say you love me. Because it's not mechanical. It has to be from the heart. And many people don't really have the emotion. They were faking it. It's not. So when you can genuinely come before the deity and say, from this day forward, I am yours, you're making significant advancement. Because Krishna will also accept you, and you will be put into a situation where every opportunity for service will cross your mind, and what you don't have time for, you will feel guilty. At this level, there's no question of mechanical. Your every action, your every waking moment is spent thinking, how can I serve Krishna? What can I do more? You never feel like you're doing enough. So until you reach that stage, there's always going to be there's a gap where Maya can come in. Where Krishna is saying, Manmana bhava mad bhakto, this is not just this, always think of me. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that I'm just sitting and thinking, like this, in a solitary situation. That can be there. But this thinking, actually, Ram Roy was asking me when he was giving class for this passage that I was reading Krishna book with my good wife, and came across this passage in Krishna book, and it was very interesting because she read all the time, that, and you read and you read and you reread, and it struck me very interesting that how many times we've read this, but here Prabhupada is describing, and of course everyone here has read Krishna book by now, right? I see the head moving like this. In India, when you go like this, it means yes. So you have to say yes, or you have to say no. So everyone should be reading Krishna book every day, Prabhupada said, every night, every single night before you take rest. So he starts this paragraph. For persons who are not very advanced in absolute knowledge of the Supreme, Lord Krishna exhibits his transcendental pastimes. I had to read that a couple of times. Yeah. Such persons can simply think of the pastimes of the Lord and get full benefit. This is in prayers by the demigods for Lord Krishna in the womb. Since there is no difference between the transcendental name and form of the Lord, there is no difference between the transcendental pastimes and the form of the Lord. For those who are less intelligent, like women, laborers, or the mercantile class, the great sage Vyasadeva wrote the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Krishna is present in his different activities. The Mahabharata is history, and simply by studying, hearing, and memorizing the transcendental activities of Krishna recounted therein, the less intelligent can also gradually rise to the standard of pure devotees. The pure devotees who are always absorbed in the thought of the transcendental lotus feet of Krishna and are always engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness are never to be considered to be in the material world. Srila Rupa Goswami has explained that those who are always engaged in Krishna consciousness with body, mind, and activities are to be considered liberated even within this body. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord have already transcended the material position. Well, you can continue to read that section. So here in the temple, and we say it, and sometimes when we say it a little bit in a mood like another day in Vaikuntha. Because actually the temple is, wherever Krishna's service is being performed, the atmosphere is transcendently searched because this is not a material activity. So when we think that I'm sweeping the floor, if I'm not thinking that I'm sweeping to Krishna's temple and I'm just sweeping some random, square footage in some nondescript building in downtown Brooklyn, then the benefit is there's a slight disconnect. There's benefit. At that point, it's called agyata sukriti. Right? But you're not getting the absolute benefit. But this is something which is easily rectified by constantly engaging. As the heart becomes purified, gradually, this, Prabhupada said, by inspiration. By inspiration. So it's very telling. I mean, Prabhupada could speak so many things, but here's another instruction that we should try to appreciate. That these Bhaktivedanta purports, they're not coming in how can you say, someone's academic, mundane wrangling, just by putting in some collected verses from the Shastra that automatically, that Srila Prabhupada was giving some opinion or hypothesis or like this. This is strictly, directly from the spiritual world. When Krishna, and Prabhupada was saying, I'm not writing this. Many times he described that I'm not writing this. So we have to, so when people are looking or thinking about miracles, they don't understand that the transcendental nature, this how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is acting through the spiritual master. And so therefore the position of the spiritual master, because of so many persons who are not qualified, it becomes minimized. And then people are thinking that this is just another teacher. And so this mistake is made sometimes even inadvertently when we give preference to something other than Srila Prabhupada's purports. So we have to also take care. It is not, we say the blasphemy of the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version. What does that mean? Does that mean the actual Vedic version or the interpretation of the Vedic version? Or even sometimes saying that, well, I'm not so sure that, Prabhupada was correct for all time and all circumstances. So this is a very, very difficult place to be. If one finds himself in that position, he needs to very carefully extract himself and come back to the lotus feet of the spiritual mastery in a very conscious way, not in an academic way, not in a superficial way. When it says that we're meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, this directly gives an indication that it's not a historical consideration that, yes, Krishna appeared here and he was there 5,000 years ago on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or whatever. No. This is the transcendental reality that is eternal. This is something that we have to, and we have to internalize this. It always has to be there. It cannot be separate from you in any circumstance. And everything has to be, every action that you make and every decision that you make has to be based on this heartfelt dedication. That I don't have, another motivation to place myself in, on a similar platform as the spiritual master. To this. So this is. Anyway, this is not something you have to consider for some time, but certainly in order for the society to continue, such things will be considered. They have a consideration for succession. But succession means that there has to be some qualification. And it is, again, qualification is internal, it's not external. Prabhupada, we saw that it's not by seniority, it's by sincerity. That's Prabhupada's famous conclusion in the lecture in Mayapur, when the demigods are trying to push Prahlad Maharaj forward. And all of them had failed. You can just see the situation. And what is that? Because they didn't have that connection. Even though Lord Brahma, he's the son of, the Garbha Daksha Vishnu. I mean, he's the son of the creator of the universe. And yet he felt unsure of his relationship with this particular aspect of the Lord, because he didn't have that same level of faith as Prahlad Maharaj. What to speak of Lord Brahma? In that same lecture, Prabhupada said, even Lakshmi, the husband, the wife, she couldn't approach. I remember I was telling this to Parvati Mataji at one point. We were reading, and I was listening to the lecture, and I told her, I said, Mataji, you heard this? What do you think? And she said, no, I never heard that. That Lakshmi couldn't believe that her husband could assume this form. So therefore, as a chaste wife, she wouldn't approach him. She says, I'm not sure if this is my husband. But Prahlad Maharaj could recognize. But this was a form never before seen. So how did Prahlad Maharaj recognize that this is the Supreme Lord? Only because from within. Because he had this relationship within the heart he could immediately recognize, by this internal vision, this premanjana charita, not by some external vision. He wasn't seeing the ferocious form that everyone else was seeing. He was seeing Lord Nrsingadeva as the most benevolent savior who would come to deliver him. So we have this, so somehow or other, we also have to recognize that that Krishna is appearing to us according to our sincerity. So not by seniority. You can be here for 50 years, and still be engaged on a level where, sometimes we see all the time, devotees are coming from 55th Street, devotees are coming from Henry Street, and they're still bhakta this person or bhakta that person, because they didn't make the effort to surrender with sincerity. That cements that surrender and gives it the lasting effect that produces the emotional bond between the spiritual master and the disciple. Because it's not an official thing. Officially, so many official relationships can be there. Officially we're a citizen of this particular country or that particular country, but we don't necessarily have an emotional bond in that regard. It can be there, certainly, but it's not. We're talking about something much more relevant that has to be, that our entire future in Krishna consciousness depends on it, developing this, that not just some mechanical consideration. And so one's service to the spiritual master is obviously important. He has to develop that relationship. It has to be there. It has to be in the right mood. It has to be with the right attitude. It has to be genuine. It has to be sincere. All these things are there, and of course, it's a two-way street. Prabhupada, by his every action, endeared himself to us. Everything he did made us love him more. There was nothing. There was just one of those fortunate opportunities that and we should all be grateful that we've come while Srila Prabhupada's memory is fresh, while we're reading Leelamrita, where we have the opportunity to see what a bona fide spiritual master, how he walks, how he talks, how he sits, how he speaks. So we understand what it means, acharya, who teaches by example. So I'm thankful that the purport was about flowers and ducks and things which are not, which have no English synonyms, and that we have Leelamrita to read and reread and reread, because it's also ever fresh. Prabhupada's being an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord in this way. We don't want to exaggerate, but we can understand that these pure devotees, they're not ordinary. We hear the word Nitya Siddha and Nitya Buddha, things like that, but it's very rare to see this, and like I said, we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to confirm ourselves by reading these Bhaktivedanta purports, that we can understand that this was not an ordinary happenstance, that Srila Prabhupada appeared at a specific time, coinciding with the teachings of Lord Chaitanya coming to the West, prophesied by so many, including in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and marked by his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So all these things together, make it clear that this was the appearance of a unique soul whose only business was to spread Krishna consciousness. And he did so, and that's the key. And he did it. And so this, whatever you have to do within yourself, within your mind, within your willpower, to dedicate yourself, this is the resolve that must be established. You have to figure out what's required individually, what obstacles and impediments there are, and then you have to kick them out. You have to just kick them out, whatever they are. It could be family, friends, society, one's own, attachment to his self-perception, what he sees in the mirror, what he thinks of himself. These things all have to be dissolved. They have to be dissolved. Right? What was that Prabhu who was saying that the other day? About dissolving? Chandrasekhar Maharaj, yes. He was giving a very elaborate description. So everything has to be dissolved. And the only thing that's left remaining then is as much as we can, is the pure self. That self and the eternal relationship and everything that guides it and promotes it and nourishes it. Just like we know about the bhakti lata. We know that there's the creeper of devotion and that it has to be maintained. Just like you maintain everything else. And it's being watered every day by your concentrated japa. The more concentrated, the quicker the creeper becomes strong. Just like when we're watering Tulsi, we see that in the beginning she's very thin, and then her trunk manifests. And then as she gets thicker, there's a bark that manifests because she's very strong and very can withstand a lot of abuse from the elements. There was one, so Tulsi's presence there in that strength, and you don't see wild Tulsi growing so luxuriously. I've seen 2 instances. But the one instance, of course, is when Thakur Bhaktivinoda, used that as one indication that this is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. That there was this abundant growth of Tulsi in such a way that it was not evident anyplace else. So that it was there specifically was very interesting. Another place that I know from experience was when the Jagannath deities in Mayapur, they were found. They were also discovered by the presence of a large mound of Tulsi growing abundantly. Unusual. And that area at that time, had pretty much been almost totally populated by Mohammedan. But this Tulsi was growing so luxuriant that this Pujari, when he had this sense, whether it was a dream or not, he described it as a vision, that the deities were there. And when he looked further, he discovered the deities. So these deities are there, currently being worshipped by ISKCON. So this is very... And actually, what else is there at that temple is Jayananda Prabhu's windbreaker from ISKCON, New York, Henry Street. We used to have these thin yellow windbreakers that said ISKCON on them. And Jayananda's windbreaker, Prahlada Priya, I believe, had it. And he had given it to the temple, and they made a little shrine. And that's the windbreaker you see in the famous picture of Jayananda waving while he's steering the cart down Fifth Avenue. And it was blazing hot that day. But he was covering up. He had lost so much weight due to the cancer that he was wearing this windbreaker to conceal it from Srila Prabhupada and other devotees, because at that time, not everybody knew. So that windbreaker is there at the temple. So take care of your creeper. There's always, it should be present in the back of your mind in everything you do, everything you say. You know, what will be the implications, ramifications. Nothing should be done absent-mindedly, unconsciously. This is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So at least, Prabhupada would declare, at least be conscious. At least be conscious. You know, and this is, you know, he also famously said, he said, use your common sense, and if you don't have any, ask someone who does. You know, and there's a lot of common sense in Krishna's service. It manifests all the time. And you just have to be aware. You have to be a suitable receptacle when this inspiration is coming. You know, don't just ignore it. If Krishna is telling you to do something in a logical way that you can appreciate, not just some fanatical, what do they say? We have crazy people all the time coming to them and saying, Krishna told me to do this. No. You know, this person is not chanting 16 rounds following 4 regular principles. Krishna is not speaking to him. Take my word for it. Okay, but if you're chanting your 16 rounds, you're following your 4 regular principles, and Krishna is inspiring you to do something, and you see, otherwise, how are devotees inspired to spread this Krishna conscious movement in the Iron Curtain countries? What inspired them to preach in a certain way according to time and circumstances? It didn't happen by accident. You know, these were young men and young women. Prabhupada was just sending them out. Yeah, so we give all credit. We want to see that such efforts are going on. You know, and by the blessings of the pure devotee, of course. And so those blessings are still here, but it's obvious. Prabhupada sent specific people. He didn't just randomly pick someone. He didn't just say, you go. You're young, so you should go. No, he specific people he sent to specific places. So that has to be there. It has to be obvious. So your advancement, internal and external, will give great pleasure to your spiritual masters. And they will give you the opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness. You know, on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, on behalf of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on behalf of the Parampara. But you have to be ready, willing, and able, as they say. So all 3 things have to be there. I can be ready, but maybe not willing. I can be willing, but maybe not able. So all 3 things have to be there: ready, willing, and able. And that's, you know, like mind, body, and words. Everything has to be in sync. Right? So that you can put all of your resources to the task at hand. You know, all those resources, whatever experience you have already garnered in Krishna consciousness, whatever experiences you had that you accumulated that can be dovetailed in Krishna service. You know, because many people were expert in various things. They're coming, they're engineers, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're welders, they're mechanics, whatever. There's something that can be used. But determination, the resolute determination, will not take place if one's intelligence is many-branched. So you can't be trying to apply your intelligence to becoming something other than a devotee. Otherwise, it dilutes the process. You know, as grahastas, someone has to, but my godbrother Divyanga Prabhu is happily distributing Prabhupada's books and has been doing so since he joined the movement. And Krishna is taking care of him. And he sees that. And everyone who knows Devanga sees that. And so we don't see that as grihasthas that you have to go and do something else. But sometimes, if there's a demand, you have to be simple. You have to live simply. You have to think simply, live simply. And then there's no gap. Ananyas chintayam dhamma. Krishna provides everything. So if we have faith that Krishna will provide, then there's no, and you have to also know devotees and associate with devotees who have that conviction. Who can say, yes, in my experience, I just depended on Krishna. And every turn Krishna provided, there's of course, we're not all on the level of the sannyasis who renounce everything. Early on, there's that story. In India, if you live in any room or any place that's a little bit away from, the urban centers, they have these, they have lizards that live in the thatch. All the roofs are made from this grass and have to be renewed regularly. So the lizards live in the thatch and they lay their eggs there also. And occasionally the egg will fall down and break open. Little baby lizard, if it's ready, will hatch. And Prabhupada, he didn't specifically say this, but we know this from his godbrothers, who used it as an example in his own life. That when he was confused, you could say. This is from a material perspective, it would appear this way. But ultimately, all these things are internal. And he was married, as most people are, at an early age, with a young wife and a child, similar to Mahaprabhu, but no child. He didn't have a child. And he was thinking he should leave and take sannyas, but he's thinking, how can I do that? I have this responsibility, wife and young newborn child. And his lizard egg dropped down, cracked. The baby lizard poked its head out, and a fly came down, because the flies are scavengers. They're looking for some tasty, yucky food. There's nothing more tasty than a splattered egg on the ground. So the fly came down thinking he was going to get a meal, and the baby lizard popped out its tongue and consumed him instantly. So right out of the egg, he got his first meal. Didn't need the mother lizard up in the thatch to show him how to stick out his tongue, or that this is food and this is not food. So he immediately took it as Krishna's lesson to him that if Krishna can provide for this baby lizard, then he can provide for my wife and child. And he left. And that's an extreme case, but I think you get the point. Is that in the ultimate sense, Krishna is taking care of everything. And it's not that I am the doer. So we don't artificially encourage this. And the Varnashram has it very methodically laid out. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. Okay? And this is so that there's no disturbance in society. Everything goes on smoothly. And at the right time, under the right circumstances, then one should withdraw himself from material activities. What's the point of working up till you have a heart attack and die on the job, right? We see it all the time. Now even more than ever, everyone there's a new fad out, a new phenomena, not a fad, it's called what? Died suddenly. You read about it all the time, died suddenly. People are very young, but they died suddenly. They died while jogging, they died while this, they died while that. Died suddenly, young. Unexplained right now. They'll explain it sooner or later. But it's been happening since time immemorial. It doesn't have to just, didn't just pop up. People got a heart attack and died, like that. Working hard like an ass or a cow, and then next life, who knows? And that's at the point. So we have the opportunity to enlighten the general population and give them these timeless Vedic wisdom in Srila Prabhupada's books. And we can see that he is the Acharya. Anyone who reads Prabhupada's books can get the highest realization. There's no bar. And so we have faith going forward that everything will continue, and that generation after generation will take up the torch and carry it forward. But we want to make sure, and that's our only desire, is that the benefit that we received is passed down intact to the next generation, and that it is accepted in the same spirit as it was given to us. So this is a very serious movement. It is not, like I said, it shouldn't be taken up as a part-time thing, and I'll just do this for a few years and then I'll come back when I'm 60, when I can't do anything else anymore. So that means I'm cheating Krishna of all these years of service, and it's like a bargain. I'll just come back later, hold my place. Right? This is a real, not very nice. Krishna's a person. He's calling you, and if you're intelligent, you'll hear him, and you'll surrender. And you'll encourage others to surrender. And when it appears that they're having some difficulty, you'll encourage them to stick to the process, that it works. And that many have gone before you, and as a result, we have ample information to confirm, and clear any doubts we might have. But one has to be sincere to look for them, to ask about them, to search out for them, not to just think, well, if Krishna wants me to stay here, he'll tell me directly. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to act in such a way that Krishna sees you, and that Krishna speaks to you. And that means is devotional service. There's no other way, as Prabhupada said in that purport. That is the means to engage in devotional service. And then, yes, we're all here, we all know this. It's our service to go and speak to others in this regard, convincingly. And then they will get the benefit. Right, Gopal? So as many books as we can distribute, this is how we will please Srila Prabhupada. So every day we don't make many announcements. What announcements we make? Where we're going on Sankirtan, how many books you distributed yesterday, how much prasadam we'll be distributing, and what. These are the essential ingredients, and without these, then this Krishna consciousness movement will no longer be effective. Will no longer be effective. So we have to take care. All right, so everyone's ready for the Mahaklina? Everyone has their assignment? Otherwise, everyone has to report too. Jain and Matanga, whoever's in the kitchen. Or if you see something and no one else is doing it, you can do it. That's the service. That's what the service is there for. And I have to excuse myself then. I have a meeting And if there's any questions, we could take just one or two short questions. Otherwise, everything is there in Prabhupada's books and lectures. And I encourage everyone to listen. Thousands of lectures, thousands of pages of Bhaktivedanta purports. More than enough for a lifetime. So please continue to hear and chant and speak, and try to become an instrument, to Krishna, to the mission, to the Gaudiya mission, to Prabhupada's, direct instructions to us. And so this way you'll be happy. You will not age the same way others are aging if you take this seriously, because Krishna is protecting you. We don't have any other reason for our existence. Krishna, just Prabhupada said, the prayer to Krishna is, if you desire, please let Srila Prabhupada live, if you so desire. So we're not praying for a long life, but we're praying that we can become an instrument. Now, however Krishna sees fit to use us, then please, that's how we should think. However Krishna wants to use us. Sincerely. Thank you for listening to Śrimad Bhāgavatam and Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. And all glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Sri Radha Govinda.